What are we talking about today? We are first talking about, as starting, Yom HaZikaron. Yom HaZikaron is Israel's Memorial Day. That is the shortened term. It's actually a quite long name, and we're going to read it together. As always, I'm sharing the Hebrew is in the middle of the spreadsheet, transliteration on the right-hand side, English on the left, but I'll go through it so it's not just one big spreadsheet. You will also get a copy of this as well as this class being uploaded to YouTube and via email in the next few days. So the official name of Israel's Memorial Day is Yom HaZikaron Lechalalei Ma'achot Yisrael U'Peulot HaIva, U'Nifga'ei Peulot HaIva. It's a long name. We simply call it Yom HaZikaron, Memorial Day, right? We have this term already in the Torah. Is one of the many names for Rosh Hashanah, but Yom HaZikaron specifically refers to, as it says here, Chalalei Ma'achot Yisrael U'Lenifga'ei Peulot HaIva. Chalalei Ma'achot Yisrael. Chalal is an interesting word in Hebrew. It can mean both space, as in outer space, a space within a hall, but it also means someone who fell in battle. Okay? Ma'achot Yisrael. A ma'aracha is a military campaign. Comes from the same root as the word for ma'arechet, system, but a ma'aracha is a campaign, particularly a military or a battle campaign. Yisrael. This is a compound word. We've talked about this a lot. When two or more nouns come together in Hebrew, just like in English and other languages, we have a compound word that have their own grammatical rules. So, Chalalei Ma'achot Yisrael, actually Yom HaZikaron is one compound word. Chalalei Ma'achot Yisrael is another. And here's the other one, Nifga'ei Peulot HaIva. Nifga'im are those who are wounded. Peulot HaIva is the formal Hebrew way that we say terrorism. Remember that Israel's Memorial Day is not just dedicated to those who fell in service. That's not just the IDF, that's also the police, that's the Mossad, that's Shin Bet, that's the prison services. It's also Nifga'ei Peulot HaIva, those who were murdered in terrorist attacks. And you'll see that in just a minute as we go through what to expect during the day. This day falls the day before Yom HaAtzmaut on purpose. Yom HaAtzmaut, of course, came first, but at the cost of a very heavy battle, the first official battle of Israel, although we start counting those who have fallen from the 1860s. The first time there was a Jewish settlement outside the old walls of Jerusalem is when we first start counting those who have fallen, both civilians and military. Okay, this is the official name for Memorial Day in Israel. The first thing you're going to hear, as we said, there are already ceremonies taking place around the country, but the official start is at 8 p.m. tonight when we will hear the Tzfirat Zikaron, or it's also known as the Tzfirat Dumiya. Okay, either one. Tzfira is a siren. Comes from the same root, by the way, as a tzipor, a bird. So it's an audio sound that goes through the air, similar to like a bird sound. But zikaron, again, memory. Dumia, silence, or the idea of standing at attention. And this, as it says here, it's a one-note siren, right? There's only one note. It's a flat note. It sounds for 1 minute tonight. Tomorrow morning at 11 a.m., it'll sound for 2 minutes. Okay, it's the traditional memorial siren, adopted like many of our traditions for these days from other cultures, but very much an Israeli institution to stop in place when you hear the siren. And like I said, if we finish enough in time, I'll take you out on my balcony so you can experience, hear it, see people stopping in place. Not everyone does. It's more about your own personal experience, what you decide to do during that siren. Some people decide to be stuck and be caught outside as it happens, whether they're driving or walking. Some people prefer to be indoors. The sound is too alarming. Remember that also the sound is different. And this is very important, especially for Olim Chadashim, new immigrants, people who have not yet experienced the siren go off before. We have what's called a Tzfirat Zikaron. It's a one-note siren. That's a memorial siren, as opposed to a Tzfirat Azaka. Azaka means warning or alert. Okay, and this is the sound of the siren that goes up and down in notes. And that indicates an imminent attack, usually a rocket attack. So what you'll, God willing, only hear in the next 53 minutes is a flat note. If in the event of an emergency, it'll go up and down. Okay. but that is the difference. It's also the duration. The memorial siren is 1 minute tonight, 2 minutes tomorrow morning. The Tzfirat Azaka, the air raid siren, is usually several minutes to ensure that people have enough time to know, seek shelter. Okay, halal we just explained, right? It means both space, but also someone who is killed in war. Also a disaster, by the way. Halal. Halalim is the plural. This is gender inclusive. An important part of who we recognize tonight, like I said, are people who fell in battle, people who were murdered in terrorist attacks, and included in both of those is a very important category that connects us to last week's commemoration of Yom HaShoah Ula of Israel, of Holocaust Memorial Day here in Israel, is the idea of a Netzer Acharon. Netzer Acharon, it literally translates to the last offshoot. A netzer is a shoot off a branch, like a tree or a plant, or scion, S-C-I-O-N. Okay, and a netzer acharon is someone who survived the Shoah, someone who survived the Holocaust, but had no immediate family who survived, subsequently made Aliyah, and fell in battle without having any family of their own in Israel, meaning they left no immediate family, neither children, nor brothers or sisters, nor parents. And one of the traditions on Yom HaZikaron, as we're about to talk about, is to go to military funeral cemeteries and those where people who fell in terrorist attacks fell, and to lay wreaths or memorial or stones, as is custom in Jewish traditions when visiting a cemetery. These people, being a netzer acharon, don't have anyone to do that for, at least family-wise. And so there's a great project. I'm actually going to show it to you, and I'm going to share all the screens, all the different links that I'm about to share with you today at the end. So don't worry about that. So you can copy and paste them. There's a great project that actually my colleague on the call here, Yuval, told me about, that maps where all the netzarim achonim, the plural would be, those specific Holocaust survivors, Nitzolei Shoah, who fell in battle and don't have any family, any descendants to mourn for them. There is a great website, and I'll share this link shortly, that allows you to find throughout Israel, as you see the map here, everywhere where they're buried in Israel, and you can pick which one is. I picked the one closest to us here in Tel Aviv. It's called Nachalat Yitzchak. And there it not only tells you where these cemeteries are, but then it gives you a list of all the people who are considered a Netzer Acharon in that cemetery. And it gives you a Sipur Chayav, the story of their life, and Mikom HaKever. So when you go to the grave, to the cemetery, should you want to, you can locate their grave and show them respect. It's a really wonderful project started several years ago. So anyways, going back to our lesson. Okay, so we talked about a Netzer Acharon. In general, when we talk about civilian victims of terrorism, we use the word korban. Korban or korbanot, the plural. This is an interesting word. It's a bit loaded, frankly, in modern Hebrew, because in modern Hebrew, it means a victim. In biblical Hebrew, it means a sacrifice. And it speaks to how we view people who fell both in battle and in terrorist attacks, an unwilling victim, an unwilling sacrifice for Israel's continuance. Unfortunately, we just had a terror attack about an hour and a half ago. 8 are critically wounded in Jerusalem, but it goes to show this ongoing connection between the country and Memorial Day and Independence Day. But the term that we use in modern Hebrew is a korban, is a victim. In modern Hebrew, it means a victim. It can also mean a sacrifice, but in the context, we really mean it to mean a victim. One of the, again, just like the memorial siren, another custom we've adopted but made it our own here in Israel on Memorial Day is to wear, either as a sticker or as I'm wearing here, and I'll explain it in a second, an actual flower that's called Dam HaMaccabim. Dam HaMaccabim, it has a traditional name. I believe it's called everlasting red flowers. It only grows here in the land of Israel and in the immediate Levantine area. And the tradition, just like the poppies that are worn by Commonwealth countries on Memorial Day, on Remembrance Day, And it's written here in the UK, but it's Commonwealth countries in general. The same idea with poppies, so too with this flower, Dam HaMaccabim, by legend, is it grows in the wild where the blood of the Maccabees, the Hashmonaim, fell in battle. These are a protected species. There is an initiative called Dam HaMaccabim. Literally means Maccabees blood because it's meant to look. If you can see it close up, it looks like a spot of blood. It's these very small red crimson flowers. And an initiative started about 5-6 years ago to grow these, to get the permission to grow these in a controlled environment, in a greenhouse, and then dry them and sell them as sustainable memorial pins. And the proceeds go to dozens of different NGOs that help trauma victims and veterans of IDF and other security services throughout the country. There's also one of the participants in it is the Michael Levin Center for Lone Soldiers that works a lot with Olim who serve in the army and don't have any immediate family in Israel. It's a great service. If you go to a ceremony here in Israel or usually abroad, you'll typically see a sticker with a picture of this flower on it, and on top of it, it'll say Yizkor. Yizkor meaning he will or it will remember. It's the beginning of the memorial prayer that if we have enough time or perhaps after the siren, I'll go with you together. But it starts, Yizkor Am Yisrael, may the nation of Israel, may the Jewish people remember. And it goes through all the different victims, categories of victims that we remember on Yom HaZikaron. So this flower has tremendous symbolism. We usually only see it in times of mourning, collective mourning, Dam HaMaccabim, Maccabees' blood. Okay, like I keep alluding to, Yom HaZikaron is very much started at 8 p.m. by a tekes. A tekes is simply a ceremony. It can be any kind of ceremony. In Israel, the official state ceremony is at 8 p.m. at the Western Wall Plaza, the Kotel, Rachvat HaKotel, as we say in Hebrew. And there, the president of the state of Israel and the chief of the IDF speaks, the chief officer of the IDF both speak. And there's an official ceremony that goes along with it, combining both Israeli and Jewish themes, again, making it a very unique experience here in Israel. So tekes will also happen throughout the country. Every city has its own. Here in Tel Aviv, there are multiple tkasim. Tkasim is the plural. That will start anywhere from 7:30 to 8 o'clock, 8:30. There's another one I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But at tekes, there are many tkasim that you will hear about throughout these next days. For example, tomorrow, when the siren goes off at 11 a.m., is the official state ceremony in Har Herzl. Har Herzl is Israel's national military cemetery. There are other military cemeteries, like the one I just showed you before, throughout the country, but Har Herzl is the official and largest state cemetery, military cemetery in Israel. As well as a ceremony ending Yom HaZikaron and officially starting Yom HaAtzmaut tomorrow night, which we'll talk about in a little bit. One of the unique features of Yom HaZikaron that you've perhaps heard about in popular culture, it was referred to in the West Wing, other people talk about this a lot, is what we call in Hebrew Shidur Shmot HaNoflim. It's the broadcast on Channel 11, which is the public broadcast station here in Israel, of every name of every person who ever fell in battle or in a terrorist attack. Right now, they've started the terrorist attack victims at 2:30 this afternoon. At 8:45, it's going to switch over to the military, again, starting from the 1860s, from the first settlements outside the old walls of Jerusalem. I just want to share with you what it looks like. And again, I will share the link so you can watch this at your own if you would like to. This broadcast not just on channel 11, and I think it's channel 26 specifically on the cable providers, if you have TV in Israel, but also on YouTube. If you are outside of Israel, you might have to use a VPN to use it, but I just wanted to show you what it looks like. This will be scrolling through the end of Yom HaZikaron. I paused it. I'm going to see if it's still going in just a minute, but you'll see this is what it looks like, whether it's civilian, as it is now, or soon to be military, where they have a picture of the person who fell, their name in Hebrew, and the day that they were killed, murdered, fell in battle or murdered in a terrorist attack, both the Hebrew calendar and the Gregorian calendar, with very somber music in the background. And here is scrolling that memorial prayer, Yiskol, in sort of a loop. Okay, let me see if it's playing right now. I just pause it so you can see the anatomy of it. So you see they've gone through all the names up till now, and it says here that Shemot Chalalei Malchot Yisrael, the names of those who have fallen in Israel's campaigns, Yeshudaru Misha'a Reva Letesha Ve'ad Set Yom HaZikaron. They will be broadcasted, those names, from 8:45 this evening until the end of Yom HaZikaron. Okay, so I'll be sure to send you that link. It'll be in the chat window. I'll put it as soon as I go through the end of our vocabulary list today. So we've gotten to that, a very unique part of history. You will see that it scrolls basically around this evening, 9 o'clock or so. It'll start with 1948. Remember, Israel lost a tremendous amount of people in the War of Independence. You'll wake up in the morning and it'll still be going, maybe even depending on what time you wake up, it'll still be in 1948. There's quite a lot of names from that specific war. And up until the last very few soldiers who fell in battle. One of the other parts that's known, it's often a black humor joke in Israel, is that there are no broadcasts. Right now, when the siren goes off, and even before that, all businesses are basically closed tonight. Places of entertainment for sure. Most places are closed already. They will resume open tomorrow, usually close early ahead of Yom HaAtzmaut. But it's traditional, places close. It's by law, in fact, places of entertainment, so restaurants and so forth have to be closed. And a lot of broadcasts, radio broadcasts and TV broadcasts will cease. They'll no longer be online, on air until Yom HaAtzmaut comes in 25 hours. Those that remain on are usually dedicated to programming about Yom HaZikaron, various people who fell in battle and various terrorist attacks and wars. And if you listen to the music that's played on the radio and on other programs, it's called Shirei Eretz Yisrael, literally the songs of the land of Israel. These are usually very well-known classic songs that stem all the way from the 20s and 30s. Some of the ones that when you grow up in established Jewish communities, you often learn, or at least hear in the background. The joke is that among Israelis that they always like turning on the radio on sad days because the music is so beautiful. Again, very black humor here in Israel. You like it or don't like it, but that's how many people roll here to get through these very heavy days. So Shirei Eretz Yisrael, very nostalgic, very patriotic songs, but a bit more somber, as opposed to Yom HaAtzmaut, where everything will be much more lively. Okay, one of the tkasim, one of those ceremonies I talked about that takes place that's also unique in Israel is the one that takes place here in Tel Aviv. It's called Shirim Bakikar, songs in the square. Shirim are songs. Kikar is a square, not a square like a geometric, but a square like a plaza. And the idea is that in years past, there would be a big ceremony in Kikar Rabin, the big square facing the Tel Aviv municipality building. And there would be various speakers, reflections on specific people who fell in battle or in terrorist attacks, and then there would be a major performer who would sing a memorial song connected to that person or that time in Israeli history. It's known in Hebrew as Shira Betzibul. Shira Betzibul is a very important cultural institution in Israel. Shira Betzibul can be best thought of as communal karaoke, a communal sing-along. And this stretches from back in the first Zionist pioneers in Israel to the kibbutzim, to youth movements, to camps. Anytime you're sitting around in a circle, sometimes in rows. You'll see classic videos of this on YouTube from the 70s and 80s in kibbutzim, of singing with song sheets in front of people, and that's how they're spending their time. They're singing these songs that are either about their own exploits or about others. The Shirei Eretz Yisrael. It's a very integral part of how we get through emotional times in Israel, this sort of communal cathartic moment of singing together is a very common thing. So Shirim Bakikar is one. There are other ceremonies around the country that do a similar event where well-known songs are either broadcast up on a screen or everyone just knows them and sings along. This also originates from when Yitzhak Rabin, Prime Minister, was assassinated in Kikar Rabin, and teenagers shortly thereafter came, lit memorial candles, sat around and spontaneously sang a lot of these songs. So this association with Kikar Rabin and communal sing-alongs is very strong nationwide, but especially in Tel Aviv. It's broadcast, by the way, nationally on Channel 12 at, I think it's 8:30 this evening. I'll send you again the link shortly. It's currently unavailable because they're building one of the 4 light rail trains lines right under Kikar Rabin, so it's unavailable for use right now. And then finally, as I said, tomorrow typically during the day is first the official state ceremony at Har Herzl at the military cemetery in Jerusalem, but also cemeteries around the country. Cemetery is called both a Beit Kvarot, Beit house, Kvarot graves. Kever is one grave, Kvarot many graves, or Beit Almin. Beit Almin, Almin is actually Aramaic. It's not Hebrew, but we use it in modern Hebrew. Beit Almin, you can think of it as house of eternity. Okay, think of it in the modern Hebrew as Le'olam, but Almin is the equivalent word in Aramaic, the house of eternity. And it's traditional, again, visit cemeteries to lay a wreath, flowers, stone, Israeli flag at military cemeteries throughout the country. Okay, in addition to the siren going off at 11, another tkasim, it's a very somber day tomorrow. Places will be open. They will obviously pause for the 2-minute siren at 11 a.m. And then things will, again, start to close down around 6, 7 o'clock in preparation for Yom HaAtzmaut. Yom HaAtzmaut begins tomorrow evening at about 8:30. What happens is there is a very, I would say, unique, beautiful, poignant ceremony that takes place on Har Herzl, not with all the graves, but in front of the grave of Herzl himself. Those of you who have visited Har Herzl before, you know there's a big plaza in front of it, and there's a big ceremony that takes place there called Tekes Hadlakat HaMesuot, row 15 here, right? Tekes Hadlakat HaMesuot is a ceremony that is the official transition between Yom HaZikaron, Yom HaAtzmaut, right? Just like in Jewish tradition, we have this notion from miyagon lesimcha, from sadness to joy. That you can think of that in not just what we recited during Pesach a few weeks ago, or at a wedding when we break a glass, and even though people afterwards say Mazal Tov, it's meant to be a reminder of the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem and all the past sorrows that we take on ourselves as much as with this moment of joy. Same thing here. And the idea was we can't celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut that takes place on Hei Ba'Iyar, the 5th of Iyar, the Jewish month of Iyar, without acknowledging those who brought us to this place. Those who fell in battle to ensure that we can be alive. And so this notion that we quickly transition from one to another is both very Jewish. It's also very emotionally difficult for many people. Many people, when we reopen those wounds of mourning, don't feel like it's enough time. And that's an ongoing debate in Israeli society. Is this appropriate? Is this enough time for those of us who are mourning our loved ones to transition to a period of joy? We'll talk about how that manifests a little bit, but this ceremony is that. The flags go from half staff to full staff. That memorial prayer that we talked about before, Yizkor, is recited, as well as some more somber performances. The flag is lifted to full staff, and the holiday Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day, officially begins following that. One of the centerpieces of the Tekes, which is broadcast on TV, is that the chair of the Knesset, the chairperson of the Knesset, is the MC. This is considered a event for everyone. The Knesset is the host and the chairperson of the Knesset, the speaker of the Knesset is the MC. They are given the task of opening this part of the ceremony where they light a ceremonial fire pit, and from which there are 12 torchbearers. And the idea is that every year, 12, sometimes a little bit more, 12 Israeli citizens, Jews and non-Jews, secular, religious, men, women, young, old, olim, tzabarim, are given the honor of representing who they are through their deeds, through the years. And they're given the honor of lighting one of these torches. There are 12 torches symbolizing the 12 tribes of Israel. Sometimes a small group will light together. And it's a very beautiful ceremony. And in the background is the song that's played in between them, Anu Nosim Lapidim. Anu Nosim Lapidim is a song from the 1930s here in Israel. It was originally a song for Hanukkah. The idea of we bring forth torches, right? Bringing in the light. It's a very Zionist song. It's talking about that we couldn't wait for a miracle. Instead, we are bringing the light ourselves. And it's played between each of them. And at the end of each speech, before the torch is lit, the sign off from each torchbearer is saying all these different things that they commit themselves to. And at the end, they say, Ul tiferet medinat Israel, and to the glory, to the splendor of the state of Israel. It's a beautiful commitment. It's a beautiful toast. I use it a lot this time of year instead of saying l'chaim when toasting over a drink, to say l'tiferet medinat Israel. It's a very poignant Zionist way to bring in this time of year. Another essential part of this ceremony, which is again filled with nationalism, filled with patriotism, filled with kitsch, for lack of a better term, is there are flag bearers representing all the different units in the military, and they form procession. There's a procession, and they do all sorts of different maneuvers, holding their flag of their battalion in various formations. Think of it like a marching band, an American football game. It's a very similar thing with all sorts of geometric patterns. And the song that plays in the background is the official marching song of the IDF, which is called simply Tzahal Tzoed. Tzahal, IDF, marches. You'll recognize the song if you've ever listened to Israeli radio, particularly Galgalatz and Galei Tzahal, which are both affiliated with the military. You'll recognize the tune immediately when you hear it. Okay, shortly thereafter, both at Har Herzl and around the country, there's typically Zikukei Dinol or Zikukim. Zikukim or Zikukei Dinol mean fireworks, right? Fireworks that you throw up, you explode in the sky, you launch it, explode in the sky. In the last 2 years, there has been a lot of awareness campaigns being done and lobbied successfully, both locally and nationally, that fireworks are too traumatic of a sound and experience for all those people who are still mourning from Yom HaZikaron, all the people who are veterans of wars, and the sound and image of exploding things in the air causes too much PTSD, people who survived terrorist attacks, not to mention old people, young people, animals, pets at home. It's too traumatic of an experience to immediately have the sound of fireworks. And what has developed in the last 2 years is what we call zikukim shketim, literally quiet fireworks. These are fireworks that make little to no sound, certainly much quieter than the traditional fireworks we're used to for Independence Day here and in other countries. And you'll notice that some municipalities have done away with fireworks altogether, recognizing this intensive lobbying against them by people for whom it's too traumatic to hear right after Yom HaZikaron and in general. Some municipalities will have multiple shows, but again, they're all quiet. Some of them are lasers, some of them are actually fireworks. It's a very inventive and accommodating experience that pretty much at this point is overwhelmingly accepted in Israeli society. No one, certainly people miss fireworks, but they completely understand why we've transitioned to something a little bit more accessible for people. Okay, that's all through Tuesday night, through tomorrow night. Wednesday morning is all of Yom HaAtzmaut. It had already started the night prior. Yom HaAtzmaut, Independence Day. Atzmaut means independence. Atzma'i is independent. It comes from the root ayin tzavi mem, etzem, self, which is where we get the term Yom HaAtzmaut. Throughout Tuesday night and into Wednesday, there are in major cities and even small towns a misibat or misibot rechov, right? A street party. Misibat rechov is one. Misibot rechov are street parties. They happen throughout the country. Certainly here in Tel Aviv, we have multiple ones. Some of them are planned. Some of them are spontaneous. It's a night to go out and have fun tomorrow, Tuesday night. Some of the things you'll typically see at these parties are perhaps a little childish, but it's part of the fun. One of them is called sheleg. Now you're thinking it's the end of April. Why are we talking about sheleg, right? Because sheleg means snow. Snow in a can. It's basically, think of it like shaving cream or like a soap that's in an aerosol can, and you traditionally, or little kids going around spraying each other with it. It happens. Usually people are very accommodating not to spray you if you don't want to. If you're concerned about that, just make sure you steer clear of hordes of teenagers walking around, or just for protection, buy a can off the street from someone who's selling it and just walk around as if you're threatening to spray them, so people will back off. Another thing you'll see on this holiday, for whatever reason, is a patish. Patish is typically a hammer. Thank God it's not an actual hammer. It's usually an inflatable plastic toy, something that makes sense that you hit someone over the head with, usually decorated in an Israeli flag. Some places these are being phased out. You'll still see them on the street. Don't be alarmed if you see sheleg and cans of sheleg and patishim around. Wednesday morning, some of the things you should expect during the day, and then we'll get to some of the important words to know, is a matas. Matas is the flyover. It's the thing that we've been hearing for the last week, practicing of all sorts of different kinds of aircraft. Battle, acrobatic, even foreign armies are participating in the flyover that takes place throughout the whole country. I'm going to share with you a link that includes, you can locate where your town is and what time the air show will be nearest to you. Everyone in the country can participate in this. It's really something to watch. As opposed to the mashat. Mashat means a flotilla. Matas comes from the verb latus, to fly as in an aircraft or some sort of vehicle. Mashat comes from lashut, which is to sail. And mashat is a flotilla. And there is a flotilla between Herzliya and Tel Aviv along the coast. You can also watch if you're in between those two cities tomorrow. Some of the other things to expect is the Chidon Tanakh, the annual international Bible contest that brings together school children from around the world to participate in a contest on the Bible. You participate in your own native language, so English speakers will have their questions in English, Spanish speakers in Spanish, and so forth. Almost always it's an Israeli who wins at the end, but it's a really impressive show to watch on Wednesday morning on TV. The other important event that takes place in terms of a ceremony or an event is the awarding of the Israel Prize. Israel Prize is the highest civilian honor in Israel, given in all sorts of different departments. The winners have already been announced, but Yom HaAtzmaut is the day those awards are officially given out in again, a live televised event. Very traditional way to celebrate Yom HaAtzmaut is to go to a mangal or an alayesh. Two words that are used interchangeably with slightly different meanings. Mangal is actually from Turkish, and it refers to that keyboard-looking horizontal metal barbecue that's up on poles. That's a mangal. It's the actual barbecue kit, whereas al-haesh literally means on the fire. Both of these terms are used interchangeably to mean a barbecue of all sorts of different types of things that people will put on their barbecue. The most important part of it, however, is to lenafnef. Lenafnef is to fan flames, right? Whether you use a piece of cardboard or plastic, whatever people use to get the charcoal lit. Excuse me. The verb that we use to do this is lenafnef. And finally, a great piece of slang to know as we're celebrating Yom HaAtzmaut is the word tarimu. It's the command form tarimu. Tarimu comes from the verb leharim. Leharim is to raise up. Tarimu, however, in Israeli slang means let's party, right? The idea of let's raise up means also let's get high. You don't need to be high to party, but the idea here is tarimu. If you say yalla tarimu to a group of friends, it means like let's go have fun. Like let's raise our spirits up, not necessarily let's get high. If that's how you choose, you do you, but just know it's both origin, but it doesn't mean that when you say it in the slang context, means let's go have fun. All right, let's go out. Maybe to a misibat rachov, a street party, or misibat bait, a house party. These are all the different things to expect in the next 48 hours. Let's go through some of the words you're going to hear throughout that, the feelings, a lot of other things that are connected with these 48 hours that are important to recognize, because you'll hear these words throughout the year, and you've heard these throughout getting ready for these 2 days. First off, getting ready for Yom HaZikaron is the word shchol. Shchol means bereavement. You hear this word a lot during this time of year. Shchol means bereavement. And we talk about bereavement of families, of Israeli society, all sorts of different things that are really important to understand here. Okay. Sorry, just one second. Just want to make sure that this is enabled. Great. Okay. I see, by the way, sorry, the chat was disabled. It is now enabled. If you have anything not concerning this class, you can write it in the chat. I'll be sending all those links in the chat very shortly. I'll tell you when. Okay. A family that is bereaved, meaning a family who lost a loved one that they are mourning on Yom HaZikaron, is known as a mishpacha shakula. Okay, you've heard a lot about mishpachot shekulot in the news in the last few days and weeks. It's a family that is going to the one of these cemeteries to mourn an immediate relative. Okay, and when we talk about bereavement and mourning, we're also talking about loss. And it's an important word to unpack. And first talk about what we don't mean when we say lose. In Hebrew, there are 2 verbs or 2 shorashim, roots. Remember those 3 letters that indicate the meaning of a word through how it's conjugated. One of those words for to lose is lafsid. But lahafsid doesn't mean to lose someone. It means like to lose a game or to lose a bet. That's not the verb we're talking about here in row 36. We're talking about this shoresh, aleph, bet, dalet. Anytime you have a word that has aleph, bet, dalet with various vowel sounds and other supporting letters around it, what we call the mishkal or the binyan, indicates something to do with losing. Something physical, but usually something emotional too. Let's explain, because this is a really important verb. First off, avda, right? Avda, those of you who are a little bit more advanced in your Hebrew, this is called binyan kal or pa'al. Avda best gets translated to it or she was lost. Think of the line in Hatikva, Odlo avda tikvatenu. Our hope is not yet lost. Right? What's important when you use this verb, avad, avda, avdu, first off, we usually use it in the past tense only. And it's when we're trying to emphasize that which is lost, the object, right? Od lo avda tikvatenu, right? Our hope is not yet lost. That's the best way to translate it, to emphasize it's about our hope. We are obviously included in that, but it's hope that we hope is not yet lost, okay? So avda, when we use that verb in modern Hebrew, it's referring to the object or the someone that we've lost rather than ourselves. So here's an example of using this verb. Avduli hamaftechot, or avduli et hamaftechot. My keys are missing. Okay, or my keys are lost. Listen to how I say that. It's not I lost my keys or you lost my keys. We don't necessarily know who was at fault or what was at fault for losing something. We just know that a certain object is lost. That's how we use this verb. Avad, masculine, avda, feminine. Avduli, past tense, plural, avdu li hamaftechot. Avdu refers to maftechot. Li is to me, right? I am not the subject. I am the object here. Lost to me were the keys, right? In very Yoda-sounding English, but that's how he would say it in Hebrew. Avduli hamaftechot, avduli et hamaftechot. Okay? As opposed to, we know who lost something. Ibda, she lost something or someone. Okay? So, if you want to say, I lost the keys, not just that the keys were lost or are lost, I lost the keys. Ibadati et hamaftechot. Okay, we're going to use binyan PL. Those of you who know what that is, if not, don't worry, we're not forcing you into intermediate Hebrew quicker than you're expected or want to. Ibadati et hamaftechot, I lost my keys. Okay, now I'm the subject because I'm the one who caused the action to happen. Okay, some other ways that we use this shoresh of aleph, bet, dim, dalet. Okay, first off, halach leibud. Someone who is who halach leibud, he got lost. He went missing. He got lost. That can be in a supermarket. That can be on a trail. All sorts of different things. Hu halach leibud. He got lost, or he was lost is another way to translate that. A great expression in modern Hebrew, ibedeta eshtonot. He lost his senses, or as we would say in English, he lost it, right? Meaning his mental, emotional faculties. Ibedeta eshtonot. Okay? It's not quite the same as he went crazy. It's more, which is lehishtagea. This is more, he lost all compulsion. He lost all compunction. He lost everything that otherwise prevents him from doing something he otherwise wouldn't. Similar with this root, because this is a very hard root to hear, and we use it a lot during Yom HaZikaron, and it's why it's so important also to go over its many applications, because we hear it throughout the year as well. Avud. Avud means lost in the sense of hopeless, or helpless. Not necessarily avud, I'm physically lost. It's more I'm emotionally or mentally lost. Avud, avuda, avudim, avudot, with an aleph. Again, because that's our root. Aleph, bet, dalet. Ovdan. Ovdan means loss as a noun, right? The ha'ovdan shel karov mishpacha, the loss of a relative. Okay, loss as an adjective. And finally, another unfortunate application of this same root is lihitabed. Lihitabed literally translates to lose oneself, and we use it in modern Hebrew to mean to commit suicide, right? If someone hitabed, God forbid, they committed suicide. Hu hitabed, he hitabda, hem hitabdu. Okay, there are other ways to say that in modern Hebrew, but I'm just using this to show the application of this one shoresh throughout modern Hebrew. Let's talk about another one that you're going to hear a lot in different applications throughout Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut, which is Zayin Chaf Resh. Zayin Chaf Resh has something to do with memory and remembrance. Okay, first off, the name of this holiday that's about to begin, Yom HaZikaron, the Memorial Day or Day of Remembrance. So first off, we have the verb lizkor. This is one of the first verbs you learn when you're learning Hebrew. Lizkor means to remember. However, and this is where the modern practicalities, kick in. In modern Hebrew, we usually only use this verb in both the past tense and the future tense. Ani zacharti shenifgashnu pa'am. I remembered that we met once. Or Yizkor Am Yisrael, may the nation of Israel remember, right? That memorial program I talked about is in the future tense. Okay, so past and future tense is usually how we use this verb lizkor. The verb that we use for the present tense to talk about remembering something is actually lehizacher. Same root, just a different way of conjugating it. Ani niskar. There's a beautiful song by a very famous singer in Israel, Zohar Algov, and the name of the song is Nizkar ani b'mabatech. I recall your gaze to a woman. Ani nizkar, I man, recall or remember, b'mabatech, of your gaze. Okay, lehizacher is followed by the preposition be. Niskarti b'mifgash ha'acharon shelanu. I recalled or I remembered our last meeting, but in the present tense, we want to say I remember. This is typically the verb you're going to hear. Okay, even though it translates often as to recall or to be remembered, we don't usually use it in other contexts. Okay. Excuse me, this should be, as I'm seeing this should be present and future tenses. We use liskol in the present and future. We use lehizacher in the past and present. Okay, so ani zocher, hu yizkol, ani nizkarti, ani nizkar. Okay, for 51 and 52. 53, another application of this root is the verb lehazkir. Lehazkir literally means to cause to remember something, which simply means to remind. To cause to remember, to remind. And that's followed by the preposition le. Tazkir li pam haba. Remind me the next time. Okay, tazkir li, tazkiri li, tazkiru li. Remind me, meaning command in the future. Okay, we also use it in the present tense, as it says here on the left-hand side. Let's see some other applications. I want to get to some of your questions and then break for those who want to join us for the siren, and then any remaining questions afterwards at 8 o'clock local time. Zikaron, we talked about memory, memorial. Azkara is a memorial, usually it can be both a physical memorial, like a memorial space. Azkara is also the word we use in modern Hebrew for the Yiddish term yahrzeit. Right, when you're commemorating the date of death of someone, is in modern Hebrew an azkara. Yiddish Ashkenazi Jews will often say yahrzeit. In modern Hebrew, azkara. Okay, a tizkoret, same root, zayin chaf resh, means a reminder. Right, you sent yourself in your calendar a tizkoret to pick up laundry or groceries. Right, a tizkoret. And also related is the word for souvenir, right? It's something to remember and experience by. A souvenir, which in modern Hebrew is a mazkiret, right? So 4 different words, nouns, all coming from the same root that means to recall, to remember, to remind. Memory, memorial, reminder, souvenir, all have to do with memory. And finally, our last word with this root, at least for tonight, is mazkir. Mazkir or mazkira is a secretary, the person who reminds you to do something, because it comes from that same verb lehazkir, to remind. So a secretary is someone who reminds you to do something. At least when modern Hebrew was being evolved, this is how they thought of what a secretary does. Mazkir is a male secretary, mazkira, female secretary. A mazkirut is a secretariat. You can think of that both in socialism terms, other places that have a mazkirut. This is also the term, by the way, that we use for American governmental offices, right? Secretary of State, mazkirut ha-medina, or mazkir ha-medina, the actual person who fills the role of Secretary of State, mazkir ha-medina or mazkirat ha-medina, depending on their gender. But the Department of State, that's how I should have said it, Department of State, mazkirut ha-medina. Okay. So that was that root. Last root, and then we're going to break for questions, and then the siren, for those who would like to participate, is the root sin mem chet. Sin mem chet. We're talking about miagon lesimcha, from sadness to joy, is the root that gives us the words for happy. No less important, because we end these 48 hours with Yom HaAtzmaut and moving forward as a people, as a country, and it's important to focus on both sides of it. So, a couple important words to know. We've talked about these before. Lismoach is to become happy. Liot sameach in Hebrew can also be expressed as the verb lismoach. Samachti shebata. I'm glad that you came. Literally, I have become happy that you arrived. Okay, you can also use this in the future tense. This is a really nice way to reply to someone. Esmach shetitztarfu. I would be happy. I would love for you to join. Right? As we say in English, I would love for you to join. Esmach shetitztarfu. I would be happy for you to join. Oftentimes when you're asked by someone in a service industry, would you like something? A really nice way to respond yes is instead of saying ken, say esmach. I would be happy. I would love that. Really nice way, polite way to say to someone yes. As opposed to lisameach. If lismoach is to become happy, lisameach is to make someone else happy. Those of you who are familiar with traditions around a Jewish wedding, for example, you know that whole notion in one of the Sheva Brachot, lisameach et hachatan ve'et hakala, right? To make the bride and groom happy. Same thing here. Toda shesimachta oti as our sample sentence. Thanks for cheering me up. Thanks for making me happy is a really important thing to do in our daily lives and in general. Okay, with that, I'm going to pause here. I'm going to put in the chat all of the different links that I talked about just now. Okay, if you would like to join, you can just copy and paste that in the time that we have remaining. Before we break, those who are already leaving, as we're just under 5 minutes before the siren, remember this class started early at 7 p.m. All of our future classes will be at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. You will see that the link won't open until just before 8 p.m. Israel time next week. We started early on purpose, just so that we can make sure that we get people all of this information. The vocab list you will get after Yom HaAtzmaut. Remember, Yom HaAtzmaut, besides being Independence Day, is also a Yom Shabbaton. It's typically a day off of work. So Nefesh B'Nefesh's offices will be closed on Wednesday. Hopefully you will get this vocab list Thursday, if not shortly after, with words, all those roots like with Aleph, Bet, Daled, and Zayin, Chaf, Resh that you can use throughout the year. Okay, let me answer some of these questions until 7:59 so I can then take you out to my balcony. Okay, folks who are having problem in the chat, you should be able to copy and just paste it. Don't necessarily click on the links, just copy and paste that whole text that you see. Okay, all right. Leah asks, is that the kalaniot flower? No, Leah, great question. Kalanit is an anemone, anemone. I can never pronounce it right. It's another protected species in Israel, but this is not an anemone. That looks more like a poppy flower. This flower, Dam HaMaccabim, is a very small bud. Okay. Jonathan, this is being recorded and it will be on YouTube. If you signed up for Cafe Oleh via Nefesh B'Nefesh, you will get a link to the YouTube. You can also simply go to youtube.com, type in Cafe Oleh, and you'll see the playlist that gets regularly updated with all our new classes. It's a great resource that you can watch all of our previous classes and see what topics we've already done as much as you'd like. Okay. I live in Modin, in neighborhood called now. My pleasure, Evie. Thank you for being in class and telling us about, yes, your neighborhood is Plachim and Modin. Modin is the traditional place where the Maccabim, the Hashmonaim, lived and rebelled against the Seleucid Greeks. Evie, is there some kind of greeting or saying you say to people before on Yom HaZikaron? Great question, Evie. Really quick, tomorrow during the day, it's already appropriate in the afternoon, starting from 12 o'clock onwards. It's appropriate and okay to wish someone a Chag Sameach. Or if you want to say Chag HaAtzmaut Sameach, it's perfectly all right. Tonight, you wouldn't say that. Tonight, you won't necessarily need to say anything. Think of it like going to a funeral or to a house where there's Nichum Avilim, where there's Shiva call, how you conduct yourself. You usually don't directly address someone. It's considered collective mourning tonight. So you don't have to necessarily give someone a huge hug and kiss. You don't necessarily have to go out of the way to say something consolatory if they're not directly mourning. Just be aware, some people have that background. It's okay to simply say shalom or hi. Maybe just tone down your emotion when you say it. Miri, like I said, we start counting the names of people who fell in battle since 1862. This is before the British even arrive in the land of Israel. This is during the Ottoman Turks, when the first settlement outside of the old city walls of Jerusalem was founded by Moses Montefiore. I believe it's 1862, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Thank you for getting my typo about cemetery. I always spell it one way or another. Yes, Karen, the name and code numbers of the two radio stations. Galatz. It's spelled exactly as it sounds, Galgalatz. You can stream that live for free anywhere around the world. Just type it into Google, you'll see it. Okay. I'm going to send it again just now so that people see it, or at least can screenshot it. We will send you the links, no problem. Okay, and folks who would like to continue joining with us, I'm going to take you outside to my rooftop. Those of you who would like to go and hear it on your own or do whatever you'd like, thank you so much for joining. I'll be back to answer some questions just after the siren goes off. Toda rabah, I'm taking you outside, those who would like to stay on. And otherwise, we will see you next week here at Cafe Oleh, 8 p.m. Israel time. Okay. Just coming back. Okay, so any last questions? Apologies if you couldn't hear it. Computer sometimes has that issues, but certainly able to at least let you see a little bit of lack of movement on the streets as you're supposed to stop when you hear it. Again, it'll be on at 11 a.m. If you listen to the radio from abroad or you're able to use a VPN to watch Israeli TV, you'll also hear it at 11 a.m. local time Israel. If you weren't able to hear it through my computer, which happens, you certainly have that opportunity. Okay, any last questions in the Q&A? Okay, with that, again, Toda rabah, thank you all for joining. Next week, we will meet at 8 p.m. As always, you can email us at hebrew@nbn.org.il with any questions, comments, concerns you might have. We'd love to hear from you what topics you'd like us to cover that we haven't in the past or you'd like us to do. Next week, we'll be back at our normal time. I believe next week we're actually going to get back to the news. Quite a lot is happening in the news here in Israel. So we will do our one of my favorite classes, I know one of yours, media literacy, how to read Israeli news sources in Hebrew at even the most introductory level of Hebrew. With that, toda rabah, hope you all have a meaningful Yom HaZikaron, a Yom HaZikaron mo'il, as we would say in Hebrew, mo'il meaning meaningful, and Chag HaAtzmaut Sameach, a happy Yom HaAtzmaut. Take care, everyone.